Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be about Ghosts I Have Loved by L.B. Black, the first in the Princess of the Bones duology. Okay, so this is going to be a bit of an odd review, because I came within a millimeter of DNFing this book. Like, I wrote the first half of this review with no intention of finishing the book. But if I did, even when I was still starting to write this review, I would have said I'm going to give this a 4.5 or 5-star review if I gave star reviews. Like, this is a very positive review. I very much think that this is a great book. It just wasn't the book for me at this moment. Ghosts I Have Loved is set on an island named Verdaria, a place where, until recently, the dead were revered, and the living prayed to the eternal pilgrim, a death god. Only a decade or so ago, a schism happened in the church, and the followers of a new god, the Light-Bearer, slaughtered all the followers of the old god, setting off a cataclysm that shook their entire island, an earthquake that killed hundreds. Now, the only remnant of death worship on island are the death channelers, mediums who can, for a steep price, call the dead back to answer questions, to fulfill tasks, and to speak to the living. Issa and Felix are two of the best up-and-coming death channelers on the island, and when they are both hired by Xavier Delgado, the man behind the schism in the church, a man they both have reason to hate, they will have to go from rivals to accomplices if they hope to take Delgado down, or even to survive. And here's the thing, I was loving this book up until a certain point. The world building is great. It's full of really evocative images, beautiful descriptions, biting interplay between religion and politics. There's enough familiar from our world to settle into without huge amounts of exposition, but enough new and novel to scratch that itch for the otherworldly. There's a beautiful combination of Latin and Caribbean influences with the 1950s nostalgia and the creepy, but almost comforting familiarity with death. Like, I loved the world here, and the deadly dangerous theocracy and corrupt political world built on top of that was wonderfully striking, and it felt like a beautiful way to work in themes of hypocrisy of the rich and powerful. And our characters are also wonderfully striking. Both Issa and Felix are cold and calculating, but still care deeply. They both have an intense core of morality that I loved. Like, yeah, they are both willing to lie, cheat, break laws, and maybe even kill, but it's to take down someone that we as readers also hate. Like, it's easy to want this man killed. They're both very ambitious, determined to be the best at their job, but I love the fact that they are also both very willing to sacrifice being the best and sacrifice everything for what they feel is the greater good. And I loved the way the author was playing with the expected and the unexpected elements in both of our main characters. Like, Issa is someone that would be easy to just dismiss as a femme fatale. She is stunningly beautiful, knows it, and knows how to use it. She's always so perfectly put together, but we get to see the work she puts to being that way. We get to see her being what she's expected to be, and using those expectations to her advantage. And Felix is, at first glance, a classic uptight nerd. He's book smart, he's studious, he does things by the book. But he's also physically strong, a good fighter, and is breaking as many laws as anyone else does in this book when he feels it's necessary. He is absolute chaos when he's off kilter. He is both aggressively dominant and absolutely desperately soft for Issa. And they are great foils for each other. And of course, from moment one, they obviously are deeply attracted to each other. And I appreciate the fact that beyond just the obvious sexual attraction, they deeply admire each other. And we can see that their rivalry from the very beginning is about half the fact that they are so ambitious and they hate being shown up by the other, but also the other half is them making assumptions about each other that once they figure these assumptions out, help them get the easy reason for them to immediately start seeing each other in a new light. I will say, I feel like the transition between rivals and lovers was really well earned. It works really well and has a natural build to it. But I do also feel that the transition between just sleeping together to deeply caring about each other, to me, just felt a little bit fast. but like not irrationally fast, not like one of those that you're going, why are they suddenly thinking like they love each other? Like, I get where that comes from, but I just wanted to see a little bit more of that part of the relationship. But that is just a me preference kind of thing. That is one of my favorite parts of this kind of story. So yeah, I did want to see a little bit more of it. But the prose was also really, really clean. There's just enough flowery descriptions to keep the reader in the place, to make things feel visceral, and to give me beautiful pictures in my head while still feeling light and quick moving. Like, this is one of those books that never felt like it got bogged down in the description, but I also have scenes from it in my head so clearly that they feel like memories. Like, they're not just images, but scents and sounds and the feeling in the air. It's just really well written. I made a short with one of the lines, or a couple of the lines, but I was tempted to share a few more of the lines from this book because I really love them. They were really striking. But the ones that I liked the most are also tended to be a little bit spoilery, and I do try to avoid sharing spoilery lines. But one of the last scenes that I read before I put it down, there was a character who was eating a steak, and it was one of those descriptions that was doing physical things to my body. Like, my soul was trying to creep up my spine. It had the perfect focus on the perfect details to make me viscerally uncomfortable. And like, it wasn't just one of those moments of thinking, yes, the characters are afraid. I am afraid for them. I hope they survive, even though I truthfully know they're definitely going to. Like, I actually felt my heart beating faster, and it's fucking rare for a book to do that to me. So why the hell did I stop reading? Because I could tell where it was going, and I'm not in the place to go there right now. I'm never really fond of stories that revolve around betrayal, stories where the person you think is a good person is revealed to secretly be evil, or even to have just done a horrible thing. And this is the moment that I stopped writing this review, and I decided that I was going to finish the book. There is so much that I loved about this book that it felt silly not to finish it. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like this book was going to weigh on me if I didn't finish it. Like, first of all, I just don't like failing to finish books. First, there's this feeling of loss that I invested time, money, and just hope into the story, and I really wanted to like it. So for me, DNFing involves a bit of light mourning. But also, DNFing often leaves me feeling incomplete. Not knowing what happened in the rest of the book will bother me. I will spend days wondering where the story was going. No matter how little I cared about where it was going while I was reading it, once I've put it down, it matters. But also, I get this just general feeling that I've failed to complete something. Like, you know when you're doing chores and you're vacuuming, but you see something on the floor and you have to go put it away, and you go put it away and you get distracted putting other things away, and you sort of forget that you were vacuuming in the first place, so you go to sit down and you're reading and you're just getting this sort of itching feeling in the back of your head saying, I am failing to complete something. I'll feel that way if I, like, just decide to DNF a book. And then you add in the fact that I actually really did care about these characters in this world, and I knew it was going to be a pestering voice in the back of my head saying, you are in the middle of something. You need to finish whatever you were in the middle of. So I decided to just skim the scene that I was having problems with and keep going. And yeah, I will say that scene was a lot. There's often a scene in books where, for lack of a better description, the bottom drops out from under characters. Like, they think they know what's going on, they have a plan, they feel like things are beginning to work, and suddenly something switches. In anime, for a really cheesy example, you often have that moment when the enemy of the week suddenly admits, I've only been fighting with 1/10 of my power! If I drop these little cufflinks, I can fight you even stronger! Or whatever. And I will admit, in books, it tends to hit me a bit hard. And like, it's one of those things that editors will say that this is the moment that will get the readers invested. This is the moment you need to get people to care. But truthfully for me, it's far more likely to throw me out of the book entirely. I don't like feeling like the world is crumbling below me. Often this moment feels too helpless, too hopeless, too discombobulating for me. I much prefer a slow revelation that the world is not what the characters thought it was. I prefer characters to fail, but to still feel like they have a chance. I don't like it to feel like there's literally a floor dropping out from under me. And if a book draws the characters too low too quickly, it's likely to throw me out of the book. And this one threw me out of the book. And I think a lot of it is because the writing is so evocative and descriptive that I was deeply drawn into the story. And the feeling of falling felt very real to me. Not like I was reading, but like I was experiencing it. The moment when the characters thought they knew what was happening and it was suddenly undermined, when they suddenly realized they were powerless, hit like a fucking brick wall. And frankly, that wasn't what I was looking for in a book at this moment. You might have noticed that the world is a bit on fire out there right now, and so having such a destabilizing moment in a book just left me feeling upsetty spaghetti instead of, you know, enjoying reading. And so I took a break. I skimmed about 5 pages and went back to actually reading once it felt like the characters were in a place that they had a fighting chance. And I mostly loved the rest of the book. I'll admit, this is one of those books that cuts off at a point that I didn't really want it to. This is a duology, and it's actually very, very common for duologies to cut off with the characters in a really low moment or on the precipice of a low moment. Like, that is a common end for the first book of a duology. And sometimes I'm fine with that. Sometimes it's a bit heavy for me. And this one was just a bit of a heavy place for a book to end for me. But I will still say that I absolutely think that this is a damn good book. Everything I said about this book in the first half of the review, when I still thought that I was going to DNF it, when I still had roughly 100 pages to read, I still feel that way about it now after having finished it. I loved the journey the characters were taking. Their arcs are beautifully painted. I love the discoveries that were made from the point that I would have stopped reading. The description of some of the death spirits was absolutely spectacularly creepy. I loved the time we spent in the other world. There are scenes from the latter half of this book that I am really glad I got to read. And honestly, that moment that made me almost quit wouldn't have hit me so hard if it weren't a good book. If I didn't care about the characters and the world they live in, I would have just rolled my eyes when everything crumbled beneath them and move on. This is the kind of book that often sends me into a reading slump, time-wise, but not really emotion-wise. Like, the amount of time I will be actively reading will be relatively low because I need time to decompress with what's happening emotionally. But I wanted to finish it tonight, so I forced myself through emotions that I would have otherwise given more time to. And I love how strong and impactful the emotional scenes in this book are, but I just sort of didn't want them to be quite as heavy as they were. I will say this is one of those books that I 110% recommend to anyone who loves fantasy and romance with some spice, because yeah, I would say this is middling amount of spice here. Like, think 4-ish scenes of pretty explicitly described sex, but not entire chapters long. But readers who like a darker world and darker themes are okay with heavier feelings and want a cathartic read. They will love this book. I think it's got really interesting story to it. My only actual complaint about the book is there are a few themes that I feel like get a little bit redundant after a bit. Like, I feel like the masks people wear were brought up just a little bit too often. And once in a blue moon, I did get a little bit lost in mapping the physical interactions of characters in both the fighting and the fucking, which, yeah, those two things are weirdly similar in writing. But it's just one of those moments that I wouldn't be sure, like, which direction a character was standing. And it's one of those things that doesn't really matter as long as the vibes are vibing right. But every now and then I was standing there going, wait, how does he have his hand? Like, what? But small, petty, tiny complaints. This was a damn good book. It's just a bit too heavy for me at this exact moment. But if you follow my reviews, you also probably know that where I am the most picky when it comes to personal preferences in books is the balance of heaviness and lightness. And it doesn't help that I picked this one up specifically because the last Romantasy I read was the perfect level of lightness for the moment. And this one just wasn't that kind of Romantasy. But I think a lot of other people will absolutely love this book. So even though I didn't have the best of times finishing it, I'm glad I did finish it. And when next time the world is a little bit less on fire, I'll look for the second book in the duology, or maybe pick up another book by this author, because I really liked her writing and her characters and her world. It just got a bit too heavy for me.